You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Tamim Hamid. He's the author of Grow It Back. We're going to talk about hair loss. He has a PhD in biomedical engineering and a history of designing life-saving lasers for astronauts, which is very interesting. So he's decided to set his sights on hair loss. Using his decades of laser expertise, Tamim created Theradome, the first FDA-cleared wearable laser phototherapy device to stop hair loss and regrow hair. It was a crowd-funded medical device. Very interesting. So we'll talk about that and astronauts and all kinds of interesting stuff. So welcome to me.
Well, thank you, Richard, for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, tell me about, how did you and hair loss decide to study hair loss? What got you into it?
It's a very interesting question. Like I was saying, I was working at Kennedy Space Center on laser systems that are stimulating, not hot or burning kind of type of lasers. There's different kinds of lasers, but the first types of lasers I was working on was to stimulate the organs, especially the lower extremities of astronauts after they return from space. One of the problems is that since there's no gravity, it's microgravity up in the space stations or in the space shuttle, they don't use their feet as much, of course. And so what happens after 2 or 3 weeks, atrophy sets into the lower extremities, and it takes quite a while for them to get back. And when they get back from space and start walking, they have problems, especially the longer they go. There's astronauts that have been there for 400 days and they're carted out in gurneys, and they cannot walk by themselves because basically the whole lower extremities have gone atrophied. And so what we would experiment with different ways because it's kind of hard to exercise in space. So we applied laser phototherapy to stimulate the muscles and to keep them in shape during the duration of their flight.
Why can't they, I guess there's only so much you do in the boots. You can, I don't know, can you do like calf raises or anything, or move your ankles around or toes, or there's only so much you can do?
Yeah, there's only so much. And there's one of the things is that, we try to also put them on a treadmill and then hook them in. Zero gravity, it's definitely very challenging. So we would hook them in, like if they were on a treadmill, they would wear a special belt, and then we tie that belt down to the treadmill so they don't fly away. And gravity is an amazing phenomena for the Earth, but not so much for the microgravity that's up there. It can hurt you. And I always tell people that, look, what's fascinating is when you look at aliens, you always see aliens with a big head, which is what happens to astronauts, and a very smaller body and almost no leg. And if you see pictures of aliens, it's pretty amazing how it turns astronauts just like that figurine, because their chest size increases just a little bit, their head sizes increases, but their leg and arms decreases substantially. So we eventually will turn into aliens if we stay there too long. So it's definitely difficult to do any sustained exercise because they try to do 2 hours, but 2 hours is a lot for very little that you're doing in a microgravity environment.
Well, why would your head get bigger and all the extremities and everything get smaller? I can see the atrophy, for all the extremities, but why the head get bigger?
So the head gets bigger because you're getting a lot more blood flow. If you look at the aorta, the release of blood from the heart, probably about 40% goes to the head and 60% goes below for your extremities, lower extremities. So what happens is that since there's no gravity, more blood is flowing towards the aorta, towards the head, than it is in the lower extremities. That's why the head gets bigger and it becomes redder, basically, because there's probably double the amount of blood flow that there would normally be in a gravitational pull Earth like ours.
Would astronauts have to spend prescribed length of time laying down to sleep or sitting? I mean,
Be upside down. Up. They sleep upside down. Yeah.
Why couldn't they be buckled in to sleep horizontally?
Well, it's mostly for space. There's not enough space to do those kind of things. They sleep vertically.
Oh, okay. They have to sleep vertically. All right. What about being upside down? I mean, it's probably not pleasant, but will you spend some time upside down to help them?
Yeah, in space, there's no upside down. It's microgravity. It's microgravity. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. But you have the orientation of the body and the tissues and all that. Like, again, why would it preferentially go to the head then? Because the head is quote unquote above the heart, it's floating.
Yeah, that's where when you're in microgravity, you can spin around. There's no up or down. That's the problem. And the forces from the heart go directly to the head, and it's very difficult to go all the way down and back because there's no pump in the lower extremities to bring it back.
So I guess the best position you can have in space is to attempt to be horizontal.
Yeah, we've never gone into those kind of studies. My studies was mostly, I didn't do sleep studies. My studies was just to get them back with, more blood flow to the lower extremities.
Okay. How did this translate to, use of lasers and then hair loss?
Yeah. So basically, as lasers stimulate the mitochondria, which is in every cell, whether it's bones or muscles or tendons or ligaments, we can stimulate all of it. Depends on the wavelength and the power dosage of each laser. So knowing that, there was a study a long time ago that discovered that somebody accidentally irradiated some mice at 680, and they found that it was written back in 1965. And so I applied that paper that I had discovered that was basically forgotten about, and I applied the laser that I invented. It was a very low cost laser. These are tiny lasers. They almost look like your mouse lasers, underneath. You look like your mouse underneath, and there's a red light that comes underneath the mice that you use for your desktop. So those kind of lasers are very low output, meaning less than like 5 milliwatts. So they're not industrial strength lasers. They're just very tiny. But if you can put them all in a helmet, then you can stimulate the mitochondria because all the hairs are usually about 5 millimeters or less below the scalp. So it was a perfect application to put low-powered lasers into the scalp all around, and it stimulates the mitochondria, not the blood flow. Remember, we got enough blood flow to the head. The head has got plenty of blood. So
why would you get preferential balding on the top, the crown of the head, and not on the sides and back? Like male pattern baldness, there wouldn't be a pattern if blood flow was the reason, I would guess.
So yeah, blood flow is not the problem for people not having hair on the top but having hair on the side. That's a different mechanism. The mechanism for people not having hair on top is because the body, that's a whole different concept, which is a lot of people don't understand it. In my book, I write, probably the first time anybody's ever addressed that, which is a great question, that we are built like a chimney. If you look at it, most of our heat that's generated from the liver and the heart and other organs go upward. And so when it goes up, you have heat, and heat goes up straight up. And that's why when you check your children's temperature or anybody's temperature, you put your palm or your hand on top of their forehead, and it's usually about 98.6 degrees. So when you have heat plus moisture, because you sweat, you tend to sweat a lot more. So heat and moisture produces fungi, and fungi, specifically Malassezia fervor, is the fungi that rests on top of the scalp, especially very warm and wet. That's why wearing a hat is not good. Wearing anything that can increase the heat of the top of your head is not good. So about 50% of the population is allergic to this fungi, which is Malassezia fervor. And number one selling shampoo in the world since 1955 is Head and Shoulders. And Head and Shoulders is one of the best anti-dandruff shampoos back then. And the reason why dandruff occurs is because the excrement from these fungi is dandruff. So when you have dandruff, and that's one of the ways you can tell when somebody's going to lose their hair, it's a sure indicator. So if you have dandruff, and which means you have fungi, that means you will lose your hair, since you were asking.
Okay, wait. So the fungi feed off the dandruff, or I don't understand the dynamic. The dandruff produces what, a material or a substrate for certain fungi, or how does it work?
Yeah, so the fungi lives between the epidermis and the dermis junction. That's where they hide, and that's where they proliferate, because it's probably one of the best areas. So they're underneath your skin, just like athlete's foot or any of the other fungal infections they call jock itch, or underneath large-breasted women. It's the same fungi that lives in your skin. So when these fungi feed off of your oils like sebum, what they do is they feed off the oils, and the excrement from their activity is dandruff. It's an excrement.
Oh, okay. And that comes because of what, like a anaerobic environment on the head, or it's too hot, or?
So it's a beautiful environment for most fungi, because the head is the hottest place up on top. And when people sweat, it causes a lot of, because as you know, every hair follicle has a sweat gland and an oil gland, and it's warm. So it's a perfect environment. So it has a food, it has a great environment, and it's perfect for fungi. Just like your shoes, right? If you have, for example, let's say athlete's foot, the reason why you get athlete's foot is because you're wearing tight shoes, and you keeping it really hot or really warm, just like your crotch. If you have, they call it yeast infection or jock itch or whatever you want to call it, when it gets into the crotch, which is really warm, another very warm place, you get the perfect environment. All those things: heat, moisture, and oil.
I guess there's one thing. Does that tell you that it would be good to, when you sleep naked instead of wearing white pajamas and stuff in weekends?
If you sleep naked, for which condition?
Well, so you don't build up those spots, like around the crotch, around wherever. You're less likely to build up, anaerobic and hot spots. And then I guess you could use keep your bed cooler with a bed cooling device, and all that may help.
Absolutely. If you have, like, for example, the perfect thing is that definitely, wear as few clothes, tight clothes as possible. Wear sandals if you can, as much as you can, and wear loose, very loose boxers or something, something that could breathe, 100% cotton. And if you have large breasts, which I don't think you and I have problems with, you should wear something to so they don't cover up and create an environment. So it's based on, different cases.
Well, if you're overweight and you have fat rolls, I would guess the area underneath and between the fat rolls also would create the same kind of environment, right?
Absolutely. Anytime you have skin on skin and they're overlapping, you're creating heat, because the heat is coming from inside your body.
Right. So back to hair loss. So now I know where dandruff comes from, which is gross to excrement of these microbes. So now what's causing the hair loss?
So the hair loss is happening because when a hair follicle is attacked by Malassezia furfur, the actual fungi that's responsible for the hair follicle to be compromised, now it's considered inflamed. When it's considered inflamed, a special hormone called DHT gets sent to kill hair follicles. The only purpose of DHT, which is a hormone derivative of testosterone, and it's produced in the testicles, that goes out and it kills the hair follicle. And it kills the hair follicle not by killing it right away. What it does, it tells it, okay, I'm going to shut off the biochemical pathway. So that means like any pumps within the cells that are exchanging any like potassium and calcium and all these things, it shuts down that cell. And when it does that, the next time around, the hair gets thinner and thinner. And it does that over a few cycles. So the next time the hair comes in, it comes in thinner. That's why the process of hair loss takes several years. At first, you have really good, thick terminal hair when you're young. And then after several years, your hair becomes thinner and thinner. And that's because DHT was sent to shut it down over time. Now, and I can explain to you how we...
Yeah, but you would think men, as they get older, their testosterone would go down. The circulating DHT would go down. So why would this happen? It seems contrary to what's going on.
No, not at all. Actually, what happens is that as your hair is the last thing your body needs. And as you get older, your body pays more attention to inflammatory processes, let's say in your lungs, in your heart, and your liver, and your pancreas, your stomach, your cardiovascular system in general. Now, as you do that, your immune system, what it does, it gets rid of anything that is not focused on making sure your core, which is all those organs I mentioned before, if those core organs are compromised, it will get rid of your nails and your hair. And that's why we always, in medicine, you look at people's hair and we look at people's nails, because that's a good condition or a good sign that there is a underlying medical condition going on.
So even though, I don't know, 55-year-old guy would have less DHT circulating, what is offsetting that effect to make their hair thinner and to make them go bald?
So when a healthy person, well, even if you turn 55, you would agree that the body is getting older and it needs more maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So as you get older, more DHT is produced as you get older. It's not that there is more testosterone or less testosterone, is that there's more DHT, because DHT, it's sending out, and if you look at it from this way, like DHT is only used to kill hair cells, because if you look at the hundreds of thousands of hairs that are on your body, it's saying, I've got to maintain over 100,000 cesses.
Wait a minute, why would this all sounds kind of odd. As people get older too, they're growing hair in places they don't want. Why would new hair come? Why would preferentially hair just appear from one place and appear in others? The ears, the nose, and all that. And then there's also people that are overweight. They're probably producing more estrogen, or the whole testosterone cycle, I would think, would go more towards higher levels of estrogen. And hair loss in women is less common. The whole thing sounds like counterintuitive.
Not at all, because as I mentioned, the mechanism of action on the head is based on inflammation, based on the body's fighting an inflammatory process due to malassezia fervor. Now, the reason why you're growing hair on your ears is that there is no inflammatory of a condition. There is no reason for your hair, on your ears or on your back or whatever the case is. It's not affecting, there's no inflammatory process for those hairs. And women, they have different type of hair loss. Their hair, they still have testosterone. Testosterone is present in both men and women. Now, much less for women, but they both male and female both have DHT. So DHT is produced for females, but you'll never see a woman that's completely bald, but you'll see women that their part line goes wider and wider. And that's one of the signs for hair loss for women. Their part line separates. And then, you'll probably start noticing it after I say it now, that you'll see women who their part line is very tight. And then all of a sudden, as they get older, especially around menopause, when hormonal activity is the most, hence also testosterone and DHT, they lose hair.
What about, persistent inflammation over years? I would guess, so what is the mechanism of hair production? There's cells where the hair is kind of like cilia that's extruded out through the cell, and that becomes the hair, or how is hair produced?
Yeah, we are born with the same hair from day one. So there's about anywhere, depending on your background, or dark hair, blonde hair, but we're born about 400 hairs per square centimeter. Okay, so any one of those hairs, their hair follicles are there ready to go, but only a certain percentage are showing and popping out, if I can say, at any given time. So you might have in a square centimeter, maybe 4 or 5 hairs. And when those die off and start over again, a new set of hairs come out, 4 or 5 more from the 400 that's available. And it keeps on cycling like this until the day you die.
But how is the hair actually produced?
Well, that's just like how a bone's produced. And that's part of the stem cells, right? So many cells are produced by the body for every square inch of our body.
Well, if I have let's say I buzz my head so I get half, right? I got real short hairs coming out of my head. How do they get longer? Where does that material come from? Is it?
Yeah. So there's 2 fundamental things in each hair follicle. So the hair follicle has a papilla at the below. It's right at the very end of the follicle. Okay. So you probably seen it whenever you pull out a hair, you might have seen some white area. That white area is the papilla. The papilla is responsible for the growth, and there's some stem cells in there, and it produces keratin. Keratin is produced, and that's how the hair goes up. And as soon as it reaches above the scalp, it's dead material. So your hair is dead after it reaches the scalp. So below the scalp, it's alive. The second place that is very important for the hair is called the bulge. The bulge is like the umbilical cord for the hair follicle. So the hair follicle stays on your head for anywhere from 2 years to 8 years. So one hair can stay on your head for between 2 years and 8 years. If you're very unhealthy, it's less than 2 years. If you're a healthy person, that same hair will stay on your head for 8 years. That's the bulge, and it's basically where all the stem cells are. Then at the end of 8 years, it releases the hair, and then a new hair comes from a different hair follicle.
Oh, so once a hair follicle goes through its cycle of producing the hair, that's it? It's done?
No, it's done for that cycle. Then another hair, because there's 400 hairs. Think of it as that there's 400 candidates in 1 square centimeter, and only just maybe 5 to 10 can be coming up at any given time in that square centimeter. So it would be the other follicles turned. The other ones would go dormant. The one that just evacuated that hair will go dormant for a while.
But it'll come back and produce again at some point.
Theoretically it will, if you're healthy, right? So if it hasn't been hit by DHT will attack it and keep it from going up.
So is it that people literally have no hair, or it just becomes less and less dense and thinner to the point where it just looks terrible as hair? I'll just freaking shave my head.
Yeah. So as your hair gets thinner and thinner, what happens is that a new skin comes and covers up the skin, your scalp, for example. And that new skin is called epidermal growth factor. And if you notice, the hair follicles are still underneath it, right? There's still 400 hairs. That doesn't die, that doesn't go away. But a new skin with no hair follicles and only oil and sweat glands are in this new skin, and it becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. The hair follicles are deeper and deeper and deeper. And so now that's why you see guys that are completely bald or bald on top, and it's really shiny. And if you get a shiny scalp, that's like the end. You'll never be able to get your hair back, because now instead of 5 millimeters being down below the scalp, now you're like closer to 6 or 7 millimeters. And that's a great indication. If you see guys that are really shiny scalp, and people always ask like, oh, are you putting wax on your hair or what on your scalp? What are you doing? And
right.
No, it's just because it's oil, and it only has oil and sweat.
So someone that looks to be bald to the outside actually could have a whole bunch of hair lurking beneath the surface of their skin?
Oh, they all had their hair. They have 400 hairs or so below the skin. Yeah.
So everyone has a bunch of hair below the skin. Just people that are appear bald, it's not coming through the skin.
Yeah, because DHT has turned it off. Remember?
Right.
And
what about like a physical narrowing of the pore that a hair would go through?
There's some what's called de novo hairs that come through. There could be some very thin hair, but they'll never turn into what's called a terminal hair. Terminal hairs are those thick hairs that you have with your teenager and most of the adult life, but it gets thinner and thinner over the years, and through it's called miniaturization. When it miniaturizes down to almost very little, you can barely see it, and that's when they call it like baby hair. It's the same hairs that were very strong many years ago, but it just they got suffocated.
So why do people get gray hair and then white hair? Like now, I'm 50, and now, I don't know, my wife's like, oh, you have gray hair and white hair. I'm like, okay, great. Why?
Yeah, so the two are different. Hair loss and gray hair, two different mechanisms. So I write this in my book in detail, because a lot of people ask me about gray hair and hair loss. The hair loss process is because of an inflammatory process that's happening, that you have some kind of underlying medical condition. Gray hair happens because it's an aging process. And if you're aging, what happens is that there's not enough melanin to go in the hair. So what happens, you start graying. And with our device, what we found is that when we have people that have gray hair and they apply the Theradome laser phototherapy, their gray hairs are no longer visible. And they ask us, oh my God, is this thing converting my gray hair into dark hair? We said, no, we are growing new hair, new terminal hairs, which are your natural hairs from out of the 400 hairs per square centimeter. But we are essentially overtaking your scalp. So it appears like you have or less gray hair, but you have the same amount of gray hair. We haven't touched the gray hair. You're just having multiple new hairs of your natural hair color.
Huh. What about white hair?
Yeah, we don't control the hair color. We don't care.
No. I don't understand what you mean. Like if you have, if you're in a field of black hair and you got one gray, you can't really see much. So if preferentially the new hairs that are growing are the original color, they don't kind of crowd out the gray, is what you're saying visually. The people won't see it.
Yeah. So if let's say you had dark hair and it turned gray, right? Let's say your whole hair turned gray and we apply the laser, that one area, let's say you said one gray hair, or one dark hair, whatever the natural color is, we will bring back much more darker hairs in those spots.
Yeah, so if an area was like 10% gray and 90% black, and you make it, 2% gray and 98% black, it looks blacker.
Yeah, exactly. Your hair will get darker, much darker. That's one of the phenomena of our device, is that if you have lighter hair, that's one of the things we've discovered that I didn't really design into it, is that people's hair get much, much darker using our device.
What about white hair, though? How is that different from gray hair?
Well, white hair is the hair color. So you can have red hair or, any other color hair. So we don't touch the hair color. If
white hair,
your natural color is white hair, we will keep the white hair.
No, like I said, my mom myself, hair cutter said the same thing. She goes, oh, you got gray hairs, but you got white hairs. And the white hairs are thicker. So what's the difference physically between gray hair and white hair? White is so
what's your natural hair color?
Like dark brown.
Okay, so we only concentrate on the dark brown hair. We don't touch your gray hair because the the gray hair or the white hair that you're referring to is part of your aging process. We can't reverse aging.
No, I know, but why would some of my hairs turn gray versus white?
Well, so if you're dark color, let's say it's brown, the process of turning from brown to white is gray.
Oh, so those are just the most advanced hairs that have lost the most melanin.
Exactly. So white hair is the most advanced. Gray hair is probably what you had 10 years ago. And white hair is what you'll have when you're 80.
Okay, so if someone is gray at 60, by the time if they make it to 100, it should be like all white.
It's mostly white. That's why you see older ladies with completely white hair. They probably had blonde hair, which blonde hair people tends to get more white hair than other colors.
Okay, I got you. So your product will stimulate traditional terminal hairs to grow. That's what it both.
Yeah, we stimulate the hair follicle. And there's, as I mentioned, if you can imagine, there's 400 or so hair follicles. We stimulate what's down there. That hasn't been touched. So all that time, those 400 hairs have been waiting to come up, right? It's like saying, put me in, coach. And when we put them in, that's the original color that you were born with.
How effective is this? So yes, as far along you are, the more effective, or?
Yeah, it's 100% effective. It'll do three things. It's the third. So when I first invented this, I was the first one to get it through FDA for a wearable device like this. And before that, it was minoxidil. Let me just give you a comparison. Minoxidil is a vasodilator. It just brings more blood flow. And as I mentioned before, blood flow doesn't mean nothing, okay? So astronauts didn't get more hair, but when they were up in space, it just got more blood flow. Number two is finasteride, which is anti-androgen. Finasteride, unfortunately, makes you less male if you're male. And so the concept there is just that it's supposed to make you from very high testosterone to less testosterone and thereby reducing DHT. But it doesn't work very well because it's got a lot of side effects. So minoxidil gives you about an 8% hair count increase. Finasteride gives you about a 12% increase in hair count. The our device gives you 89% increase in hair count, 89%. So it's a factor of 10x. And the other thing is that it stops hair loss, which is different than finasteride and minoxidil. They both don't stop hair loss. And the other thing is it increases the hair color, or goes back to darker levels that you had back when you were younger, because as you age, your hair becomes lighter and lighter and more rougher as it gets. It's not as smooth and shiny. So what we're able to do is bring back the spring, because what we're doing is we're stimulating that tiny muscle inside the hair follicle, because we're not just looking at the hair follicles, we're making the sweat glands better, we're making the oil glands better, we're making the muscle that holds up your hair better. So you'll have, if you ever seen guys with, advanced hair loss, you can see that they can't put their hair down, or they have to use a lot of hairspray and other things to keep their hair down, because that muscle is compromised as well. So when we stimulate it, now they have better hair days and they can comb it and it stays down.
Okay. So why do some people keep their hair so much longer than others?
Well, it's a preference.
Well, like in my family, my one brother, he lost like all his hair at like 27, really early. And then I'm 50 and I still have all my hair. It's weird. Why is it so radically different?
Yeah, fortunately, okay, that's a different question than why do some people keep their hair long? Is that related?
Yeah, like even within a family, I've seen it, sometimes like I said, like within my own family and others, some people keep their hair a long time and some don't. Does anyone figure that why?
Yeah, so it's in my book. You can read all about it. It's 446 pages of why some people keep their hair and some people don't, but it has to do with genetics, right? So most of the information about hair comes through the mitochondria and in your genes. So it tends to be more from your mom's side, because the sperm doesn't have any mitochondria. That's one of the things. So when the male's sperm doesn't pass that information through, it passes only certain things. That's why women control a lot of the diseases that are passed down from one generation to another. So these mitochondrial diseases are passed down. So maybe your mom's family has more hair loss and more allergic to this Malassezia fervor than you are. So you can do a simple fungal test and see if you're allergic to Malassezia fervor. If you are, then you're a good candidate to lose your hair.
Okay, I see. Well, sorry for the detour. It sounds like your book's got a lot of great stuff. Just a couple more questions about your device. So, like, what does it look like?
Well, it's a helmet. Yeah, it's a helmet device, and what it does is that it has about 80 lasers, and these lasers you can't feel a thing. There's no pain, there's no heat, and you use it like at least twice a week. And what it does is that it stimulates the mitochondria. It's 20 minutes twice a week, and you put it on and you can walk around. It's wireless, and you can read a book, you can wash the dishes, you can shave, do all this stuff, and twice a week. And it's becoming part of people's daily routine. So some people will use it more than twice a week. So a lot of people use it on our daily thing, and they get three things. They stop their hair loss within 2 or 3 weeks. So that's really good. There's nothing in the world today, not a drug, not a device that can stop hair loss. We're the only device in the world that can stop hair loss, which is worth the price of it all by itself. Because most people pray that, can I just keep what I have, right? That's all they pray. So we can answer that prayer. The second thing that we can do is that we can regrow hair, but it takes 4 months. You have to wear this device for 4 months, because hair takes 4 months to grow. Just like a baby takes 9 months to gestate, hair grows 4 months. We can't shorten it. We can't do anything to manipulate it, but it takes 4 months to grow a new hair. One of those 400 hairs has to come up, but it takes 4 months to do that. Then the third thing it does is that, as I mentioned, the hair becomes much more manageable and darker.
Okay. So what's the best path for people that want, help and want to use your device? Should they just go straight to you? And if so, how? Or should they read your book first? What's your recommendation?
If you have any signs of hair loss, just get our device. Don't go for biotin. Don't go for a shampoo. Don't go for anything. Don't use minoxidil. Don't use finasteride. Don't waste your money. All you need is my helmet to stop hair loss, regrow hair, and we guarantee it. If you take our quiz, the best thing to do is go to our website, theradome.com, Theradome, and go and take the quiz, and it'll tell you if you're a good candidate for our device. And once you do that, then you get the book as well. Read the book, get to know it, and while you're doing treatments, and we guarantee you that you'll stop your hair loss and regrow your hair. As long as you're not advanced, you're not like Kojak, right?
Gotcha. Okay, and how can people get in touch? What's the best ways?
Yeah, definitely come to our website, theradome.com. And then you can contact us and go through the website. You can see everything that we have to offer and how we can help you. And then also you can email us at any time at support@theradome.com.
Okay, very good. That's it. Thank you so much for, what you've done. I'm sure it's helping a lot of people. We're very grateful. And and thank you for coming on the podcast as well.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. Looking forward to hearing it.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.